At 65 years old, adults are twice as likely to be killed or injured by fire. That risk grows with age, doubling by 85. Fire is not the only hazard that threatens our older citizens. Falls lead the cause of death for unintentional injury in the home. 30% of people aged 65 and older are involved in falls each year. This leads to injuries, loss of mobility, and sometimes even death. Reduced mobility hampers movement and may result in failure to escape a fire. Because fire spreads rapidly in the home, sometimes only seconds are left to escape. By giving you the tools and tips to prevent these two issues, we can help you age in place safely. This is Remembering When. I'm here today at the Brunswick Police Department in their dispatch center, and I'm here with Tasha Russell, dispatcher, and she's going to go over when it's appropriate to dial 911 and also what the process is going to be when you're on the phone with the dispatcher.
So we are in the Brunswick Police Department, which is located at 85 Pleasant Street, and we have 2 dispatchers on at all times.
There are many dispatch centers in the state of Maine. Some towns have their own. Others share county centers.
So we dispatch for police, fire, and EMS. So we dispatch for Brunswick Fire and Rescue, Brunswick PD. We dispatch for Freeport PD and Fire and Rescue, and then we dispatch Fire and Rescue for Pownell.
Dispatchers are the initial first responders in an emergency. When should someone dial 911?
Well, anytime somebody feels like it's a time-sensitive situation, whether it's medical or something suspicious or there's a disturbance happening, something along those lines.
Don't hesitate to call.
The way we look at it is that it's better to be safe than sorry. And usually the statistic says that somebody will call 911 once in their life, and because they feel like it's an emergency. So if you genuinely feel like this is an emergent situation, then dialing 911 is perfectly acceptable.
There are circumstances where you can call the non-emergency line.
Right now, what really sticks out is fraud complaints. People's identity were stolen, or they received a call from the IRS and they think that they're trying to be scammed. They'll call 911. Yes, that potentially could be bad for that person, but that's not technically an emergency. But we do get some 911 calls for that. But you would just call us on the business line for that.
Have patience. The questions are important.
We do have questions that we have to ask that helps us know what's going on, helps responders know what's going on, and then helps us give you proper instructions to help take care of yourself until the responder gets there. But it's a typical medical call from when we pick up the phone to when we start the engine or the rescue or anything is about 35 seconds to a minute.
Although it can be frustrating and feels it's taking forever, take the time, answer the questions. This will help save time in an emergency. Remaining calm will help you speed up the process and get the appropriate help you need.
That saying is particularly true, like help us help you. Taking a deep breath, we say that quite consistently just because it is an emergency. It is something dramatic that's happening, especially if it's a house fire or a serious medical call. But the fact of just taking that deep breath and just listening, because we're going to coach you through the situation. We're going to coach you through it. We're going to tell you exactly what we're doing, exactly who's coming, and what you can expect when everybody gets there.
Cell phones don't always send you to the proper dispatch center. Stay on the line and answer the questions.
You may get state police, or you may get the neighboring county Sagadahoc. It honestly depends on what cell phone tower you bounce off of. When you make the call, you could be standing on Pleasant Street facing Topsom, and your 911 call could go to Sagadahoc. So that's why you will probably get asked anywhere from 2 to 3 times what your location is, just to make sure that we have that accuracy, but then that you're also speaking with the correct department.
A lot of information can flow through a dispatch center in one day. It is a job that requires multitasking, focus, concentration, and a cool head under pressure.
So yeah, we stay pretty busy because there's only 2 of us, and we average anywhere from 100 to 150 calls a day.
Storms and emergencies that are out of the ordinary can create a surge of calls for dispatch centers, taxing their resources. Patience is key when there is a situation such as this.
Well, Brian and I, when we had the power outage right before Halloween last year, the one that like took everybody out, him and I by ourselves in 3 hours took like 300 calls.
Remember, have patience and try to remain calm. We need your help so we can help you. Well, Tasha, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks.
Great tips from Brunswick Dispatch, and again, stay safe. When you need to use a generator, there are some simple rules you should follow to stay safe. When setting up, keep them away from doors or windows. Always operate generators outdoors. Keep them away from the home. A generator's exhaust creates carbon monoxide. This is a deadly, odorless, colorless gas. In high concentrations, it can be deadly. What can be helpful can turn deadly. Power's out, generator's out. Appropriate lighting in the home is important, especially on the stairs. Mobility worsens as we age. Our bodies are not as quick to respond. Keeping the lights on helps prevent falls. Lighting your stairs appropriately helps you see where you are stepping, lessening falls. Any fall is significant, but down a set of stairs can be worse or debilitating. Make sure your stairs are well lit. Have a 3-way switch installed at the bottom and top of your stairs. This allows you to turn it on and off from wherever you are. Use a nightlight to guide you through the dark, or simply flip the switch. Help yourself prevent falls in the home. Light your path. Stay sure-footed. Summer's here and temperatures are rising, especially inside our cars. Our pets want to remind us that they can't tolerate the heat inside parked cars. On a 78-degree day, a parked car can reach 100 degrees in mere minutes. At 90 degrees, a whopping 109 degrees. Since a dog only cools off by panting, it is extra hard for them to stay cool. It takes less than 15 minutes for brain damage or death from heat stroke. Although your dog loves car rides, it may be their last. If you find an animal in a car and you believe it is in danger, dial 911. Do not attempt to free it on your own. This is illegal in the state of Maine. Only authorized officials are allowed to do so. Your pet can't tell you how hot they are, and you're not psychic, no matter how much you want to believe you are. Keep them cool, that's the rule. I'm here today with Jim Graves, head of Maine Fire Service Institute, to talk about fires that change the world. So, Jim, what fire are we going to discuss today?
Today we're going to talk about the Station Nightclub fire that took place on February 20th in 2003 in West Warwick, Rhode Island.
Now, give me a little background on the building itself.
It was a place of entertainment, a bar, and there was a lot of, at one time it was a restaurant and had been converted into like a nightclub bar. So it was a place where bands would play, a lot of heavy metal bands. So that evening, Great White was playing, and they had just been in Maine, actually, at New Schweiz in Orono the night before, and done the same exact things that they did that evening. We were very lucky that nothing bad happened here in Maine. So the fire started when the band started to play that night. So they were the headline band, and it was very packed. I mean, they had filled the place to capacity and then some. And the band started playing, and when they did, when when they started to kick off, they set off fireworks. And they used what they're called gerbs, which are just basically, as soon as they ignite, they just spray a shower of sparks out. There's no explosions or anything like that. And it's just an effect that is used commonly in entertainment. Unfortunately, where the band was playing on the stage, the drummer's alcove, due to complaints of noise from surrounding residential homes, they had lined it with like egg crate foam. We call it egg crate foam because it was sound absorbing foam. And that foam lined the alcove, and that's what first got ignited. There is a video that I believe everybody has seen that's in the fire service where they show the gerbs go off and the flames first start. The same evening, there was a film crew doing a documentary on overcrowding in nightclubs and what goes on. So this was actually filmed from beginning to end. It's a very, very tragic fire.
Let's talk a little bit about the tragedy that occurred from this.
So the fire, within a minute, that everyone knows that there's a serious problem. And the fire alarm activation went off, but there's no sprinkler system. So the fire alarm, you can actually see in the video the strobes, and you can hear the fire alarm going off. The band members fled the stage because the fire was becoming intense, and individuals started to go back through where they came in. And that's a normal behavior when it comes to human behavior in fires. They very commonly go out where they come in. There's actually studies been done on the mathematical modeling of human behavior in emergency situations, and 9 times out of 10 the individual will go back to where they came in, and they could be sitting right next to an exit. There was an exit just off the stage where a lot of people could have gone out, but instead they funneled back through that primary exit. The smoke was very dense and thick due to the products of combustion, and it started to dim the place pretty quickly. In under 3 minutes, this place was fully involved. And the fire department was notified and responded. The first due engine company had 2 people on it, and there's very little 2 firefighters are going to do to affect a positive outcome.
Now, people tried to flee. They tried to escape. They went through the one exit. Again, like we've talked about in other episodes before, about using and knowing your other exits
Absolutely.
out of the building. So what resulted from this? Like, what was, I guess, the tragic loss from this fire?
There was 100 people perished from the fire that evening, and then a few days after with some of the burn victims. And there was over 230 non-fatal injuries. So you're looking at 330 people that suffered some type of injury from this event. And including a lot of psychological injuries, as you can well know or imagine. So then after the fire, they figured this whole thing out. It becomes a huge lawsuit. And I have attended many programs, one at the National Fire Academy on fires in the built environment, where we took this as a case study, and we broke it down, and we looked at all the contributing factors. NIST, the National Institute of Safety Technologies, did a couple of burns. They set up and built the stage exactly like it would have been, and set it on fire and did some measurements of combustibility of the materials and the smoke, products of combustion, and the speed of fire growth. And they also did one with a sprinkler system to see what would have happened. Right. And obviously, we know that if there had been a sprinkler system in that building, would there have been injuries? Of course. There probably been a couple of people hurt. Would there have been 100 fatalities? I would have to say absolutely not. The fire growth would not have gotten to the point where it was so out of control that it created that panic. And again, we got that, just like we did at the Beverly Hills Supper Club. Everybody came into an exit way and wedged, and that's where the concentration of, I think 31 people perished right there. Wow. At that main exit.
Now, even though there was tragedy, and I know, like you said before, the fire service is reactive versus proactive.
Absolutely.
At least something came from this, right?
Right.
I mean, and not saying that the lives were worth what came from it, but we do know that something came from this, correct?
Yeah, I mean, everything was looked at. The fire service kind of reeled from it. It goes right into inspection techniques and methods. Are our inspectors picking up on everything that they need to pick up on? The inspector for that particular fire, they looked into everything that, every inspection that ever happened in that facility. They looked at, how the firefighters responded to that. You're dealing in a crowded parking lot, trying to get a piece of apparatus close to try to affect any type of fire attack and rescue. It was all against those poor men that night. I've never felt so bad for firefighters as of those two men that night. I just can't imagine having to deal with something like that. And then it gets into, your interior finishes and sprinkler systems and the fire alarm activations and being able to shut down all communications in a facility and have some voice come out, please find the nearest exit. Having those exits lighted and cleared and arranged in a manner that the people can get out. If you watch the video, which is out there on YouTube and other sources, one individual did break a window with a chair, and there was some people that came out through that window. But the black smoke, the panic and the confusion of the occupants was rapid. I mean, this thing went bad like that, and that's really concerning. So I guess my lesson to anybody that's watching these videos is when you go into a place, look around and find that second way out, and if you don't feel comfortable, leave.
Yeah.
I've actually been in a restaurant in Pennsylvania where I said, I'm not eating here, and left. Oh. Just because I was concerned with the practices and what I saw.
Yep. Now, this did change, though, how event spaces or what spaces can be allowed to be used as event spaces, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, they looked at, the life safety code, which is adopted in the state of Maine, and look at, arrangement of exits and sprinklers and what type of venues can and cannot have live entertainment with pyrotechnics. Pyrotechnics now need to be inspected by individuals from the State Fire Marshal's Office in Maine. They always have, before they can be used. It's always that individual that does it not knowing that there's rules, laws, that need to be followed. So if you know of anyone that's doing one of these events, point them in the direction of the State Fire Marshal's Office so they're doing them safely and efficiently and effectively.
I know we had, before we started filming this, we talked before, and I told you what I just read in the newspaper, that a group of people were trying to open an event space in a certain city in Maine, and they were denied the permit once they realized that it didn't have sprinkler systems in there, it didn't have ADA access. But that's for people's benefits, right? For their own safety.
It's absolutely for safety. I would recommend anybody that's looking at buying a building is to hire somebody to go in and make sure the use that they want it for is going to meet the state code, fire code, and the laws and/or town ordinances, because they have more authority than the state does. So if you're setting up a business in Brunswick, you'd want to contact the Brunswick Fire Department and speak with the Fire Inspection Division and make sure that you're on the right track before you commit a lot of money or purchase a building that you can't use for its intended use, right, that you desire to use it for.
And these things that we are discussing, these codes, regulations, it isn't about making red tape or hoops that people have to jump through, but there are specific instances in the past that have occurred that were tragedies that led to what we have today.
Right. The fire marshal in the state of Maine, I consider him my friend, Joe Thomas, and he's held this book up right here, Life Safety Code, and said this has been written from hundreds of thousands of people who have perished to fire in the United States of America. We're one of the most powerful countries in the world, but yet we still kill more civilians and injure more civilians in fires than most industrialized nations in the world. And it's for this or that, we need to protect one another. And I've said and will say again, the code is written to protect the individuals that are not intimate with the cause of the fire. Meaning, if we were at this nightclub and we didn't cause the fire that took place, but the code protected us to make an exit and to live a normal life, that's what the code's written for.
Right. I guess for me, I mean, we all work in the fire service, so we all understand the codes and regulations. But there's still an expectation when I go out, and I go out for for entertainment, whether it's at a concert, right, or to eat at a restaurant or a bar. There's somewhat of a level of safety there that I should expect that someone had already taken that into consideration.
Absolutely, and you have an expectation to be safe and sound and away from harm in any building that you go to. The Cross Arena in Portland and in Bangor, You know, those buildings have been looked at. They've got all kinds of up-to-date, modern safety, fire prevention, and hopefully if there's an event, well, I hope there's never an event, but if there is an event, hopefully there's no injuries because people have put that engineering and the codes and everything into work to keep people safe from fire.
Yep. Well, it's, again, it's tragic circumstances, but they lead to, you know, a future that hopefully is a little bit brighter for some people to when these things occur.
It's a horrible means and ways to a positive end, but there is, you know, some light that comes out of each one of these tragedies.
Yep.
So,
well, wonderful. Thank you.
thank you.
Welcome back to our segment on fraud awareness. I'm here today with Jane Margesson from AARP. How are you doing today?
Just fine, thank you.
Glad to hear it. So, what are we going to talk about today?
Well, one of the things I wanted to talk about are ways that you can protect your outgoing mail. A lot of people, you know, depending on what you're doing, you might be banking, for example, and maybe you've chosen not to do online banking. So you're paying your bills the regular way and putting a check in an envelope and put it out in your mailbox with a little flag up. So that immediately actually is a red flag of something not to do, because believe it or not, scammers will actually go mailbox by mailbox looking for the flag that's up, particularly during tax season when they know there's a lot of sensitive information going back and forth in the mail, and they'll actually steal mail right out of people's mailboxes. So it's a really good idea to have a locking mailbox, number one, and or make sure that you take any sensitive mail, something that contains a check, something that has your address, your phone number, your social security number, anything like that, and actually take it to a post office, or make sure you're putting it into a registered U.S. postal box, the blue boxes that we have all around the state of Maine. And don't throw away sensitive documents as well. We talked earlier about the new Medicare cards and making sure you're not just throwing away your old Medicare card. But this goes for your old taxes, tax returns, you know, mortgage statements, anything that's got, you know, some pieces of information you wouldn't typically just give to somebody. Don't just throw that away. Scammers will actually rifle through trash to find sensitive information that they can then use to hopefully steal your identity. So many organizations in Maine, AARP included, sponsor free shredding events every single year, and we are happy to shred anything that you have. We only work with companies that shred on site, so they're not just taking the information and going somewhere to another warehouse. They're literally shredding it on their trucks into tiny particles that could never be used against you. So
wonderful. And tearing it up, putting it in your garbage can?
No, it doesn't work. It's so easy to piece things back together. And in fact, shredders, home shredders, which a lot of people like to have, which is a great idea, make sure you get a micro cut shredder. You don't want a strip shredder, which is literally just taking things into strips, because it's very easy to piece that back together. And even a cross cut shredder, which are much smaller pieces. If scammers know that they've gotten a hold of something that's kind of pure gold to them with all kinds of sensitive information on it, it's not going to take them that long to piece something back together. But a micro cut shredder, it's literally just in particles that you couldn't possibly piece back together.
So micro cut shredder.
Yes.
And really the old traditional ones that we have so been used to, those strips. If someone's really ambitious enough, they can just take the time, put those back together, get the information, and they don't need probably the whole document, just a small section of it to find that information.
Yeah, exactly. And again, you know, we've got this great resource. This is the AARP Fraud Watch Network Handbook, and there are a number of typical scams that we hear about that are in here, and we list what they are and how you can avoid them. But there's also a lot of great resources that we talk about your outgoing mail and how to protect it. There's a way that you can opt out for unwanted mail for those solicitations and things. There's a way that you can do that either online or calling a phone number. It's very easy to do, but these are just, you know, great simple steps that you can take to be, as we've talked about, your own best fraud fighter and not being the next victim. Another thing that I would really recommend is be very careful about checking your bank statements and your credit card statements, either every month if you're getting them by mail, or certainly online. You can do it anytime you like, but I would recommend doing it more frequently. Scammers, if they've gotten a hold of your credit card or your bank card, they may put through what they call a test charge. It may seem insignificant, 21 cents, $1.03, some random number, but that little test charge is actually their way to test and see if your credit card is valid. And if they find that it is a valid card, then they may start spending, and all of a sudden you're going to see statements with all kinds of stuff on it that you definitely didn't purchase. So if you see even a small amount of something on your credit card that you don't recognize, call your credit card company. Very simple. Just make the phone call. They may be able to investigate. They may know they may be able to match that charge next to something they know is fraudulent. It's very easy to get your card replaced. And in the good news, Visa and MasterCard proactively agreed that you would never have liability beyond $50, even if a scammer got a hold of your credit card and racked up charges all the way to, let's say, a $20,000 limit. You would still only be liable for $50. And honestly, in every case I've ever heard of, it's actually a zero liability. But make sure you check your statements, because you want to take care of this quickly. You don't want it to lag on and have other charges that you might not be able to verify.
Yeah. Are there any other scams that you'd like to talk about?
Earlier when we had Commander Mark Waltz on the show, we were talking about using caller ID to verify who is calling. But unfortunately, scammers have found a way to use the caller ID technology so they can manipulate it. And a call may come in and you'll look at your phone and it might say Internal Revenue Service, or it might say IRS. It might say your name. They can easily manipulate the technology. It's called spoofing, and it's a terrible thing, because it's a way to fool you into thinking that someone legitimate is actually calling you. So it's really best, in my opinion, to let calls from people you don't know go to your answering machine, and then you can choose whether or not to pick up the call or just let it take an answer. And if it's a scammer, likely they're not even going to leave a message for you.
Yeah. Wow. It's amazing all the things they come up with and all the things they think about. It's I can imagine this must be a very frustrating job trying to keep up with all of it.
And I know there's that old adage, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And it's good advice to remember that, but again, these scammers are really good at playing on your heartstrings and pushing emotional buttons, as they did with Jean. So just remember, any of us, could fall prey to these scams. We've all got to be vigilant, but we can all be our best fraud fighter and be empowered with the information we're sharing today. And tell your friends, tell your family, order these materials. They're absolutely free, and they're just a great resource to remind all of us that there are ways that we can prevent these types of scams from happening to us.
Yeah. Well, you've definitely convinced me not to put my red flag up on my mailbox anymore and put mail in there. So you've changed that at least. But no, this is wonderful that AARP is doing this and has all these resources. And again, to the viewers at home, check out these resources, check out the links. Again, AARP is there to help you, they are there to guide you, and at any time if you have a question, contact AARP, contact the Brunswick Police Department, or any other services that you know of in the state. Until next time, stay safe.